All right, we'll call to order the meeting of the Board of Adjustments, Monday, July 22nd, 2024, 6:30 PM at Kyle City Hall, 100 West Center Street, Kyle, Texas. Will you do a roll call of members?
Palacios,
Present.
Lancaster,
Here.
Terry,
Here.
Vasquez,
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
At this time, we'll move to the approval of the minutes. Consider approval of a Board of Adjustment meeting, April 1st, 2024 meeting minutes.
I approve.
A motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay. Minutes have been approved. A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Minutes have been approved. All right, we'll open the citizen comment period. It is 6:31. Any speakers? Okay. This time at 6:32, we'll close the citizen comment period. All right, we have consider and possible action on a request regarding a variance from section 53-33 pursuant to section 53-1198 H1 for an encroachment of required setbacks in a PUD zoning district for a property located at 6056 Marsh Lane. And we open a public hearing at 6:32. And no one's present to speak for the public hearing. Then we'll close the public hearing and we'll move to the presentation.
Kayla Sharp, Senior Planner. I just want to make sure it's not up on y'all's screen. Are y'all able to see the presentation?
No.
No.
One second.
Thank you for your patience.
That's all right.
From time to time, technology's known to glitch a bit.
The pen is mightier than the computer.
It can be for sure. Did you share the meeting during Central? Did I get that email?
We just have a slight delay for technical difficulties.
There you go.
Awesome.
All right, there we go. Thank you for your patience. So tonight we have a setback variance request for a home located at 6056 Marsh Lane, which is in the Porter Country subdivision. Okay, there we go. So this is, they're seeking a variance to encroach into the required 5-foot side setbacks. So kind of the background of this request, when they were nearing completion of construction of the home, they discovered an error with the form survey, and it was determined that the home was actually built over the 5-foot side setback on the right side, and in the next slide or two I'll show you that encroachment. The home has already been built, sold, and occupied, and that is why this applicant is requesting this variance. So here is the approved plot plan. It met the required 20-foot front setback, 5-foot side setbacks on both sides, and the 10-foot rear setback. And then this next one, it's kind of hard to see. I tried to highlight it as best as I could, but at the front right side, they're about 1/2 foot into that 5-foot side setback, and then the rear side, they're at 3.7 feet. So almost 1.5 feet into that side setback. And then per section 53-1198H1, the Board of Adjustment is allowed to grant variances in certain circumstances, including issues regarding setbacks as outlined. And I'll go into why we are supportive of this request and believe it meets these criteria. So staff has found that this request is valid pursuant to section 53-1198H1. This hardship is unique to the property due to an insufficient form survey in which the error was not discovered until the home was fully constructed. The variance will not negatively impact surrounding property owners. We've also had our building official look into this issue and has signed off on the request, and no alterations to the home are required based on building code for like fire separation or things like that. And then as required, the 8 property owners within 200 feet were notified of this request as well. Because the home has already been constructed, sold, and occupied, and staff has found that this request meets the requirements of section 53-1198H1, staff is supportive of this request and we recommend approval.
Okay. Is there, I guess there's no petitioner present to go forward in this, or?
We informed them of the meeting and requested that they attend. I'm not sure if they're just running late or what happened.
Okay.
But we did inform both the builder and the homeowner of the meeting.
All right, and this time, any questions from board members? We can start down here at the end with Palacios. Okay, Mike Esser.
How was the discrepancy recognized? How did it come to our attention?
So when they did the form survey, they didn't survey the property correctly. And then when they were they usually do like a final form survey towards the end of construction. It was discovered at that point.
At that point, it had been sold or occupied?
No, it had been fully constructed, but it had not yet been sold or occupied.
And did they notify city at that time, or?
They notified the city prior to selling, and we began the process for this variance request.
Okay.
And then we found out a couple weeks ago that it had been sold and occupied as well.
Okay, so the city allowed them, or they went ahead and sold the property without?
We don't issue, certificate of occupancy for the homes. If it's already constructed and they've passed all of their inspections, they can technically sell the property. We do have the builder is acting on behalf of the current owner, so we do have the updated landowner authorization of the current owner to process this request.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I do have a question.
Go ahead.
What is, are they asking just for survey approval, or what do they want the variance for?
So the variance is for the encroachment into the setbacks. Basically, as it stands, they're in violation of the zoning code.
Gotcha.
So they need a record of the variance request if it's approved. If it's denied, There's always the possibility of, them essentially having to start over and build correctly, find a solution to correct that encroachment.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else?
I'm wondering, how long has this, when was the home constructed, and, how long of a period was this that, before this was found?
I believe it was discovered towards the end of May, and just given the timeline to send out notices and things like that to get the Board of Adjustment to meet on the issue. It can be, a 6 to 8 week process or so to process their request. So they've known since, I believe, like the end of May, and we've been working towards this meeting here tonight since then.
And the house was constructed?
The house was already constructed when they found out about it. It had been completely finished. They were, my understanding was they had a buyer on the line when they discovered the issue. So they were trying to figure out how to move forward.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious that they went ahead and sold the property before the variance request was approved. I find that kind of abnormal. We've seen these in the past where we've actually approved these kind of things, but usually the home is set in status, or the discovery happened at a later date when we were surveying for utility improvements and stuff. I've seen encroachments in utility area on a piece of property before, but usually, if it's pre-construction, pre-sold, and it's identified, the property's should not be sold until such time that variance is either granted or, administration's been done. Otherwise, it's kind of bad for the homeowner. In this case, since the property's already been sold and transferred, then it's actually the homeowner's responsibility to file for the variance request rather than just the builder. But I don't see any other things. Does anybody else have a question?
Yes, me. So was the house sold at a discount? Why haven't seen houses selling this quickly?
I'm not sure if the house was sold at a discount or not. I know that the builder did have to go back and get an updated landowner authorization form to update it with the current owner's information. So the builder did apply on behalf of the homeowner. So we have both the owner's permission and the builder's permission to process this request as the Board of Adjustment sees fit.
I would say it is highly unusual not to have the applicant here for consideration of this variance request. I think staff would be fine with you postponing consideration of this item if you wanted to ask these questions for them. Staff is not entirely sure on when exactly the levers were pulled for, home sale versus figuring out these issues. But they are good questions that we're just not able to answer at this point in time.
I do have a couple questions for you because
Okay.
I think the presentation that you show, it was not what I received. Well, maybe I'm just missing some pages because the screen is so small. But I think I read something about the staff going to the property and there was no issues, even safety issues. It was complying with the building code.
Yes, it's compliant with the building code, which is separate from the zoning code. So our building official did go out and take a look at the property just to make sure, there's certain things in the building code of you can't have, if you have this many feet of separation, you can't have, this percentage of windows on that side of the building, certain things like that. So he did go out because the home adjacent to it is built as well. So he went out there and took a look, and there wasn't anything on the building code side that would prevent him from needing to step in to make any corrections to the home.
Okay, so I thought that the building code also requires for the separation to be 5 feet.
So there is more than 5 feet, about 8.5 feet at the narrowest point of separation between this home and the adjacent home.
But
the 5 feet separation for the zoning code is to property line. So from the home to the property line, it's required to be 5 feet.
So we have 3.7 at the short distance.
Yes.
But then the adjacent property has 5 feet, so there's
But-
technically an 8'7".
But technically it's supposed to be the 10 feet separation between homes because of the smoke and fire, isn't it?
think Jason might be better to speak to that, but as I said, the building official did go out. He also looked at the building permits to make sure that they were meeting everything building code wise, but I'll let Jason elaborate on that.
Yeah, so a couple of things on the building code. That is going to be for fire separation. Depending on the type of home, whether it's wood, combustible, rock, or stone stucco, that can change what that requirement is. It can go from 10, it can go down to 5, it can actually go down to 0. So that's why Kelly went out there, not just to verify the existing home, but he wanted to look at the separation between the existing eaves, because that's most likely the spot, the fire that would jump. He said both homes have those fire-rated eaves, and he said from a separation standpoint that the building was fine, it didn't have any issues from the building code side. So he said we were all good there. It's truly just a zoning setback separation at this point.
And what is that separation?
Right
Making
now,
on
the
those
requirement.
materials.
I'm sorry, for those combinations of, I think on the 2 with the fire rated separation and the 2 stone structures, I think you can go down to a 2.5 feet, but I'd have to look at the code on that.
It's actually a pretty narrow margin because the garden homes that we do actually have, some cases they're like 2.5 feet and 2.5 feet. In those, and of course, then you have townhomes where they actually have adjacent walls, but they have to have a firewall in between the two.
I mean, ultimately, I think to answer your question, I don't know the exact distance that can be between those 2 homes, but I do know that he did go inspect them to make sure that the distance that those 2 homes are under the allowance of the fire code. So he did look at that. But I don't know the exact distance, what the code says.
Because of that statement and because of the presentation, you're putting the city of Cal basically stating that this is safe. So that's
I think
why I'm
what
concerned.
our building official has said is that in accordance with the International Building Code, that the structures meet, even though it is less than the normal 10-foot.
Yeah, but it doesn't specify the distance, doesn't specify the materials, all those that are required to set that distance. And we don't know that distance, the safe distance.
So ultimately, that would come down to an issue with the building permits, which there is not one. The issue at hand here is specifically the zoning related issue.
Right, so what we're looking at, our task is set a variance to set aside the zoning ordinance for that specific piece of property, to make an allowance for a side setback of 3 feet 7 inches at the front and 4 feet 5 inches at the back at an angle measure, since the form of the house was set wrong. So the homeowner relief, and this has happened in the past, that a homeowner relief is that that property then from this point going forward into perpetuity, if that house is sold, there's not going to be a zoning issue for that property because the variance would be either granted or denied. And if it's denied, then the builder would have to literally tear the house down, remove the foundation, and then reset and re-pour the foundation. But in this case, it'd be punitive to the homeowner. That was what my question was, is it seemed like the builder purchased or sold that home while there was a variance dispute and did not, I would be concerned that the homeowner was not notified of that at the time. And that, I don't know if the city has a fine or a levy or an admonition that they could send to the homeowner or the home builder for, failing to do, at the time that they knew that there was a problem, yet they still,
Went ahead and
sold the property. So in this case, I'd be giving injunctive relief to the homeowner for not having the knowledge that their property was in a potentially contested state. So, but again, this is a zoning issue. It's not a building permits issue. And I'm sit as commissioner of the fire department too, so I was concerned about the same thing. All right, any other questions? Okay.
Do we think that there's a problem with how they're doing the pre-formal survey, the form survey, that's leading to these variance requests? Or is this kind of par for the course?
So this is the first one we've seen, and they kind of explained, and I am not the best with, how surveys are conducted, but they did explain, how the error occurred. So far, this is the first one of these that I've seen in 2.5 years, so hopefully it's the only one, but you never know. It was human error, essentially, just not surveying the property correctly. And it was the third party surveying company. It wasn't, city inspectors or things like that.
All right, any other questions? Okay.
I did want to just clarify the separation on the building materials. I just chatted with the building official. Based on the building materials of the two homes right now, the minimum separation for the home is actually 3 feet from the property line. So it doesn't matter what the other home is at. He said based on those materials and construction type, that would be the lowest that they could go before any other additional modifications need to be made.
And we have 3.4 on one side.
Yeah.
Yes, so he's three to the property line, yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, any other discussion? All right, at this time, we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay, motion to approve. A second?
I second.
Okay, motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, would be a 4-1. All right. And motion is approved for the variance request.
Thank you.
All right. Being there are no other items on the agenda for today, we will adjourn, and that is 6:51.